Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's see what happens. Netflix season 5, all the things that are happening. I'm curious as to what is going to happen next.
She was the first person to come console me and encourage me and told me that if he doesn't make this right, it's on him. She just kept saying like all the right things. She's been telling me multiple times, like, I just see myself in you. Like, we are.
Yeah, we saw that too. We saw all that, Aaliyah. So, yeah, I think we're all just as concerned, or similar questions. I will say Aaliyah is showing a lot of maturity and differentiation and grace here, because I think other people would fly off the handle, and she's kind of walking herself through it. Although she could be on the other side of things, Aaliyah, and doesn't believe she deserves to get angry or something. But anyway, yeah. So I think what she's implying or saying, Aaliyah, is saying that Lydia was the first person, in the beginning of the pods, we were all kind of friends, and me and Lydia had maybe a thing. But then when I started going through it, she was right there, and that's when our relationship really started to get close. So what's that about?
Almost the same woman, It's just weird. I don't know how to feel. And I really do love her. She hugs me like no one else. We hold hands. It's just...
Yeah, there's another version of the story where Uche tells her, or Lydia tells her right away, and there's an adjustment to it, but it's quick enough. And Lydia and Aaliyah are still best friends. And the narrative could have been, well, Uche liked both of these people, Aaliyah and Lydia, and thus it kind of makes sense that they're friends. There are lots of situations where that's very healthy. Some of you might have relationships like that where your partner is not only friends, but maybe best friends with one of your exes. It's logical because you loved both of them, and they love you or love, one of them, so it makes sense. You share a lot in common, right? And, some people frown at that. I don't. I think that's a beautiful thing. So, just because you break up doesn't mean you have to write this person off the face of the planet. You share a history. You did have, at least I'm hoping, some sort of friendship in addition to the romance and the sex that could be sustained post breakup, as long as everyone is okay with that. But anyway, so yeah, it's a whole, but now we're looking at this this blemish on what could have been a really beautiful thing.
No one else. We hold hands. It's just, she's my friend.
She'll be one of the most incredible friends you'll ever have.
And all these stories about these girls just not being genuine, and we will be each other's genuine friend. She's going to be an amazing aunt to my kids.
All right, well, it sounds like Aaliyah is coming around. I still kind of worry about what's happening, and Aaliyah deserves an explanation there. So I hope that Aaliyah just doesn't forego that and figure everything will be fine, because there's a question mark there, especially the way that Lydia is, right? So let me table that for a second, because there could be, I'm sure there's a lot of speculation about Lydia and their dynamic and the power differential between Lydia and Aaliyah. It looks like something, right? It's particular. We're seeing an edited version, who knows? But, well, let me talk about that. So the way it looks in the edit, there's some minor evidence that their dynamic isn't equal, and that Lydia has a lot more force and power, and that Aaliyah is more dependent and defers to Lydia. And that dynamic isn't inherently harmful to either person. You can have those kinds of dynamics, and as long as everyone's on the up and up and there's flexibility, then it can work. But there's a risk of something that's already developing, or something that could develop in the future, where Lydia needs to be on top and Aaliyah needs or prefers to be underneath someone. And again, so if it's a need out of desperation, then when, say, Aaliyah doesn't want that kind of thing, then there could be a force here. Or if Lydia, for example, wanted to be supported and held by Aaliyah, she wanted to be, say Lydia wanted to switch the dynamic and have it be more flexible to the situation, there's a chance that Aaliyah would actually say, what's going on here? And reject that, or not really be there for her, or have an anxiety attack or something. So both people can be contributing to the dynamic. That is a possible hypothesis that I would explore if they came into therapy. So with those kinds of dynamics, it's a rigid, often we will look at the Lydias and say like, well, they're the architect of the problem, but they're all adults, and there's sometimes you can have a charismatic leader, almost like a cult leader, who will basically break someone down, and then we wouldn't attribute it to the system. We wouldn't blame everyone in the system. And Lydia does have a very forceful way with her, right? So, and we could absolutely imagine the way Lydia helps people. We could imagine that Lydia was helping others in the lounge, and those other women might have imagine Lydia going to Stacy and helping her in that way, the way that she helped Aaliyah. And these other individuals would be like, okay, all right, thanks, yeah, okay, thank you, that's very kind of you. I'm going to go over here, or whatever, just based on preference. But when you have a need to dominate and overpower for your own ego reasons or safety reasons or something, you might test a lot of different individuals. I'm reminded of, and I don't know all the details, of course, because I wasn't there, but Charlie Manson, the serial killer in Los Angeles, there were reports of how his cult began, and there are different reports from different people, both within the cult and people who had contact with Charlie Manson and other people within the cult. But anyway, for example, in the Beach Boys, so Charlie Manson at first really wanted to be a musician. He wanted to be like a Beatle. He wanted that fame, and he did write music, and you can actually listen to his songs that he wrote and performed on YouTube, I believe. But anyway, and they're not great, but they're not bad. Anyway, so he didn't come to LA to start a cult. He came to LA to make it in music, and so he was really keen on meeting the Beach Boys. He met the Beach Boys, the LA-based band, and with one of the members of the Beach Boys, I believe I can't remember his name, Love. What's his name? Something Love, and he met him at a party. So mind you, this is like late 60s, and Charlie Manson was berating him or saying very dominant things to him right off the bat at this party. And Love, his last name's Love, he reported later to reporters and authors that for him, he was just like, this guy's a psychopath. I don't feel very good around this guy. I'm going to get away from this guy and all of his weird follower friends. Whereas Charlie Manson went to the drummer of the Beach Boys, and who had a different history, maybe a different traumatic history. And Charlie Manson did the same thing to the drummer of the Beach Boys and had a very different reaction, to the point where the drummer actually responded to Charlie Manson and became basically one of Charlie Manson's followers, which resulted in the Beach Boys eventually recording one of Charlie Manson's songs. On a Beach Boys album is a Charlie Manson song. Some of you know this, but it's weird, right? To think the infamous murderer of innocent people, several innocent people, and this just terrifying figure of Charlie Manson. The Beach Boys recorded one. So, because I think also the Beach Boys are trying to become more relevant, and because the hippie movement and all that stuff, and they didn't really have a lot of style in that, and Charlie Manson's song kind of had that element, but also because the drummer was probably talking up this cult leader, because so the difference is in personality and history. And so For Lydia, I'm not saying Lydia is Charlie Manson. That is stupid. I'm just throwing it out there as a possibility that for you to think about when you're walking around the world is to take note of that, and also just take note of how you might be doing this yourself. Not that you're Charlie Manson, but that we might test the waters with different people for better or for worse. So Lydia might have been going around the room just unconsciously, not on purpose, and finding that some people responded to her and some people didn't. And unbeknownst to her, possibly, the people who responded to her are people who actually are very comfortable sliding into a dependent role. Like I said, it's not a pathological thing, it's not necessarily a harmful thing, but if it's rigid and it's playing out some sort of pathology, some sort of trauma, like for Aaliyah, it's possible that she doesn't feel competent enough to be the person who stands on her own 2 feet, or be the person that occasionally takes care of people like Lydia. And for Lydia, she might have an anxiety about her own inferiority that she is overcompensating by needing to establish herself as an overfunctioner frequently. I'm completely speculating on a lot of things, but it's just something to think about when you meet people and see relationships develop. It's just something to take note of. And the key that I want you to walk away with is flexibility. It's not about personality differences. It's about when flexibility is necessary to meet the needs of the individuals in the system, can the system adjust and change from the routine, from the rules? That's the marker of a healthy system, is flexibility to the circumstances. Pathological systems, pathological groups of people, they establish a routine that they collectively and subconsciously decide it has to remain the same, or else they're usually running away from some terror, and that makes the system rigid and non-responsive to outside input. And this applies not to just relational systems, but also cellular systems and ecological systems. Like, healthy systems establish a routine, but when needed, it can adjust to the circumstances. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So I don't know about you, but throughout my day, I have two opposing forces in my mind between what I want to do, like playing a video game or playing with my dogs, and what I should do, like exercise more or eat more fiber or something. As a therapist, I talk with a lot of clients about this inner conflict. Most people think it's all about willpower, even though research demonstrates that willpower doesn't really work. There are a lot of evidence-based techniques that actually work that people don't usually consider, like using behavioral shaping techniques or healing from our relational traumas that keep us stuck internally. Well, one option worth exploring is BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's worth giving a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient and suited to your schedule. And also, you can switch therapists at any time at no additional charge. So, make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
You know, I can tell you 100% she has been supportive of me and you. And I feel like that says so much about her character.
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it kind of looked. It looked like, for the most part, Lydia was supportive, at the very least not a thorn in the relationship's side. But still, I can't wait for that conversation to happen. Like, what is Lydia going to say?
We just really bond like that. I really feel like that is like my sister, I feel like I just need to have like this sister moment with her to feel at peace about it totally.
It is interesting that Aaliyah, and I don't blame her, and of course she knows Lydia way better than we do, but I find it interesting that Aaliyah is already forgiving her without having heard what Lydia has to say. I think that might say something about it. Either Aaliyah is just a very trusting, very good person, very accommodating, but is it too accommodating?
Am drawn to you because you're both incredible people.
Do you ever wish you were still dealing with her, or are you?
That's over with.
Okay.
Yeah, he dumped her. And And then Lydia propositioned him in the pods, and he gracefully escaped. I don't know. Or I don't know, maybe he still has feelings. It's nice to see people not throw people under the bus. None of these folks are throwing. Uche is saying she's a good person, she's trustworthy, and Aaliyah is like, yeah, and she is very supportive. She is always saying nice, or a lot of times she's saying very nice things about you, da-da-da. So it's good to see. So maybe it's just a misunderstanding about what one should say when you're in a pod, compound.
For a long time, because I do see a lot of qualities that would make her a good wife, she seemed 100% into me. And I thought to myself, if I can't give her 100% back, then I don't want to hurt her.
It's not the most reassuring narrative. If it's the true narrative, then good for Uche to disclose that. But I thought he would say, yeah, things were, we had a connection, but in the end, we just weren't really made for each other. And she's a good friend or something. But he's basically saying there was a chance, that I had such intense feelings for her that there was a chance we could get married, but I wasn't 100%. So what percentage were you and are you? Now, I doubt Uche is like prone to cheating or something with Lydia, but I'm guessing for Aaliyah, this isn't super reassuring.
Right now.
Yeah.
And how does she feel about Milton?
She seems very, into him.
Obviously, you can't tell her anything that I'm saying right now.
I know, of course.
But I told Milton, you don't have to get engaged in here, because I know that's what she's ready for. He is not ready for that.
Oh, right. I didn't even think about that. So Uche has been talking to Milton and didn't tell Milton, I'm guessing, about his knowledge of Lydia. So there's multiple lies by omission happening. And how's Milton going to feel about that? And also, how's Lydia going to feel about hearing that Uche has been undermining subtly?
I don't want her to get hurt.
Did you love her?
Well, I'm guessing yes, depending, what is love, as the song goes. But there's nothing wrong with it. They're playing the tense music, but if I were Aaliyah, I would hope he did love her, because they had an intense relationship, and I'm guessing that Lydia loved him, so at least it should be okay if he loved her. But we have such a weird culture, this, I think it's purity culture, some kind of traditional Christian culture around this, that the person that you end up with marrying, that you never loved another person before. But it is a question that one should ask if you ever do have these assumptions. And I don't know what Aaliyah will assume. She might be like, it's fine that you love her. In fact, I could see Aaliyah being that way because she's pretty flexible.
I don't think I was ever in love with her.
Okay, I guess that scans with the way he was describing their relationship. But I'm guessing that Lydia did love him.
Not ideal, but we'll get through it, okay? We'll get through it.
And kudos to Aaliyah for not throwing this in his face, because she has all the right to do that. So remember that time when you were kind of coming down hard on me? You had a secret about me that you were not telling me at the time. I mean, it's not the same level as cheating, but what's up with that? So often I have this question with Ultimatum Season 2, there was Kat, I think her name was, Queer Love, there was Xander. There are people that are very nice and very accommodating and reasonable and agreeable. And those are all good traits. But there's a question as to whether or not they're doing it out of maturity and love and compassion and giving other people the benefit of the doubt and just letting some things go for the benefit of the greater good. Is it that? Or do they not feel like they have the right? Or they're not in connection with their sense of injustice, so they come across like they're agreeable, but they don't know what it's like to disagree because they were never allowed to do that growing up. If you watched Queer Love, Ultimatum Queer Love, you had Xander and you had Ray, who both had that seemingly passive, agreeable demeanor at the beginning of the season. But then over time, we saw Xander actually assert themselves and show that when push comes to shove, Xander can say no and do it in a very nice, firm way, similar to the way Kat did in season 2 of Ultimatum. But then with Ray, we saw that she didn't exhibit that, and she even verbalized that she has a problem with over-accommodating and not knowing that she matters in the world. And so at the beginning of the season, they can look the same, but there's a huge difference when push comes to shove. So for Aaliyah, I don't know if we've seen that test yet, and maybe we never will, but I do wonder about that. Is it maturity and rising above it and having altruism and understanding other people, or does she feel like she doesn't have the right to even assert herself?
And I love you, so we're gonna get through it.
I love you too. And I hope that this doesn't change anything between us.
It doesn't.
And on the upside, they've both learned, strangely, because it doesn't seem like it would likely come up in the pods, they've both learned a routine of trust and revealing the truth and having the other person react with emotion, but also give you the benefit of the doubt. That's huge. It's such an important thing. It's important to think about for your relationship that how have things gone, particularly in the beginning. That's kind of where things are set. The tone is set, but it's not always set in stone, of course. But, the first time you had a conflict, the first time something like this came up, or when those things have come up in the past, what has happened? And the reason being that, say this went horribly wrong and they did decide to get married, to stay together for a while. The next time either one of them thought, I should probably tell my partner about that thing that might upset them. Well, based on court precedent, if you will, in their relationship, they would say, but it went horribly last time, so I shouldn't do it. I shouldn't reveal it this time. And then they withhold it, and then eventually it comes out, and it is a big blow up because they withheld it out of fear. And then they have yet another example of, I need to not reveal things because by the time I need to hide things even more. You could see how things would get worse and worse. Or the other person could be like, well, they hide things from me, so screw it, I'll hide things from them. And then you go down a road, even though you started out with a lot of different roads as potential. Whereas, and a lot of times, so I'll have couples come to my office and we're working on something that happened last week, but the emotions and the assumptions and the reactivity that are happening as a result of the thing that happened last week are informed by thousands of precedents that happened before that. So it's really important when in the beginning of a relationship to start things right and to go down a road, because like I said, the next time they run into this, not only will they not be going down that road of negativity and assumption of fear and withholding, but they might even want to reveal it sooner and to be more honest, because it actually enhanced their relationship. It's a big deal. People talk about how to build a relationship, and they'll say like, well, you need to be romantic or something. I don't know. But to me, these moments are the most romantic or the most relationship establishing moments. The tone is set, the expectation is building and forming. You're learning like, when I actually did the healthy thing, I was given the benefit of the doubt. It brought us closer together. You might even start revealing things that you don't necessarily need to reveal, but because you want that feeling to happen and you want to bond. It's very, very important. And if you have a history of difficulty and conflict with your partner, it's very important to get couple therapy to correct for that, because when the next time you run into a similar scenario, it can be very hard to navigate it while a flood of fear and resentment and anger are flooding into both people and forming, taking a molehill and making it into a mountain because there's like 10,000 molehills in your past that are all conglomerating into a mountain in the moment.
We are compatible in all the right ways and not compatible in all the right ways. So, no, I don't want anybody else, Uche. Like, I knew from day one you were who I wanted. And I haven't changed up on that at all.
And I also will say it's encouraging to see Uche exhibiting some real empathy and remorse, not only for Aaliyah, but also for Lydia. He was exhibiting sadness and remorse for hurting Lydia. So that's encouraging and gives me optimism about the two of them. Because up until this point, we hadn't really seen that. I assumed something like that was in there, but it was a question mark given his very matter-of-fact way of talking about things. So he is showing himself to be a well-rounded, emotionally healthy individual. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.